be Mark?
Yeah, sure, you can be Mark. Well, we're going to do this real quick. All right, we're going to make a video. We're here at Practical Board Repair School, and it is the September session. Is that right? Are we in September? Yeah. September, and we came across a kind of a fun phone that's like couldn't be more of a classic example of iPhone 6 backlight failure, which I've done some videos on iPhone 6 backlight before. iPhone 6 backlight is different than all the other backlight failures. So the typical backlight failure is going to be a short to ground out at the connector, and that is going to damage the filter almost always, and that's a pretty straightforward thing to look for that damage and repair it. But the iPhone 6 is different. So with the iPhone 6, we're starting to see these sort of, sudden death iPhone 6 backlight failures that can occur weeks later after a screen replacement. It might have something to do with using copy screens that maybe run a little bit hotter than an original screen. We don't know. But the failure in the iPhone 6 backlight occurs sort of back in the circuit. Let's take a look at the circuit itself and see what that looks like. So we're going to go look at the iPhone 6 backlight schematic. So here we are at the schematic. And all right, so guys in the course, what kind of a thing is this? Chip. And what kind of a thing is this?
Coil.
Uncle Henry, the coils. This is the backlight coil, and this is the diode. And so what happens here? What does the chip do? It's got the VCC main as its power in. What does this thing do? Switch. So it's switching the voltage to ground, which generates that boost backlight voltage. Goes through the diode. What do these guys do?
Capacitors.
Smoothing capacitors, yep. So this is what sort of evens out that backlight voltage to a smooth output voltage that goes out through this line here, the PP LCM backlight anode line. So where does this line go on to, guys?
To the filter.
To the filter, exactly. So from here it goes on to the filter. Let's see if we can find that. Here's the filter, so it comes from that driver chip area. There's a backlight filter, and then it goes on to the connector. So here's the anode line coming in at the LCD connector, and that's the backlight line. So let's look at what that looks like on a normal board. So we'll go to the microscope and find these pieces. So here we are at a typical iPhone 6. This is a straight up iPhone 6 that doesn't have anything wrong with it. So here we can find the connector. Everything looks good. Here's the connector pin for backlight. Here's the backlight filter itself. And this guy we rarely see damage there because the failure doesn't happen out of the connector. So the filter usually protects the rest of the circuit if there's a short to ground at the connector. So from the filter, working backwards, here is the backlight diode. And then under all this stuff that Yossi calls apple poop, and I like that. So apple poop is covering all of this. This is the backlight driver chip. And then here, 1, 2, 3 are the backlight smoothing capacitors. And then this is the backlight coil. So you know that I say it's never the coil, and that's true. After the iPhone 3G backlight failure was always the coil because the coil was situated in a spot that was at the edge of the board. Water damage could easily sever the connection between the coil wire and its underlying pad. So that was a classic failure. But then after that, look at this coil. It's really hard to imagine how modern coils that are in these, tough sort of magnetic-y housings, you don't even see the coil wire. It's buried inside there. So how can a coil fail? Class guys, what would it take when we were doing backlight stuff? what would it take to make a coil be the actual point of failure if you had no backlight at all?
Short to ground. Solder balls.
Can a coil become shorted to ground? Let's look at the schematic.
No, line gets short to
Sides
ground.
will stick together.
Let's look at this. This is a good question. Can the coil itself become the source of a short to ground?
No.
Not unless somehow somebody came and soldered a wire from one of the pads to ground, because it itself doesn't have a path to ground. So what is the mechanism by which a coil could actually fail?
Wires
That's
inside
currents.
stick together. High currents.
The wires inside could fuse together, or what's the other thing? Cat piss.
Open circuits.
Open circuit, right. And how do you get an open circuit on a coil?
Overheating. And the heat maybe.
I don't think so. I don't think you could heat it up enough to actually separate a wire from the thing. Like, in order to get an open circuit, what has to happen?
It comes loose from the pad. on
It comes
each
loose
side.
from the pad because you have that one perfectly placed molecule of cat piss that severs that connection between the coil wire and the pad, right? That's what we talked about back on day 2. And in that case, that is what could actually make an open line there. Something that actually physically cut the coil. It's just a slinky, inside a housing to cut that from the pads. So how common is that going to be?
Not very.
Yeah, like never, right? You're never, it's in thousands of iPhone 5s, I saw that one time. It can happen, but it's probably not going to happen. So if you're troubleshooting I don't have any backlight, what are you going to think of as your first place to look?
Connector.
The connector. You could have a connector, corrosion at the connector. You could have physical damage to the connector, pins off, the thing doesn't fit. So the connector, what else?
Filter.
The filter. The filter is easy to just destroy because it's a very sensitive component with a thin little wire inside. So any short to ground can burn up the filter. You guys saw that on 6S backlight. That's really straightforward.
Diodes.
The diodes can also fail, so if you have some sort of short to ground that gets past the filter, then the diode could also fail. And then after that, it starts to become kind of less common, right? What's the other cause of failure? Connector, filter, diode, what would be next?
Capacitors?
The capacitors could, well, how do they fail? How does a capacitor fail? Become a wire, so short to ground, exactly. So a capacitor could become a wire, and therefore your entire backlight line is shorted to ground. So that can happen. But then the idea of the coil itself being the cause of the failure is sort of hard to imagine. And that's sort of where it's never the coil means when we're troubleshooting iPhone 4, 4S, 5, 5S, 5C, all of those phones for the last year, that you're not going to be looking at the coil or replacing the coil because you think the coil is the source of the failure. It's going to be any of those other things. And then we get to the iPhone 6. So the iPhone 6 is turning out to be a really special case where other than, it's really hard even now to imagine how this coil could separate from the pads and become an open line. That's not going to happen. So what is this sort of weird failure that's becoming a signature failure in the iPhone 6? What happens to the coil? It poops, yes. So what we think is going on, just as we've seen more phones with sort of this, like strange defects, what we think is going on is that something happens in here to cause a short to ground on one of the capacitors. And then once that happens, you still have the driver chip is still shorting that coil voltage to ground, but now it doesn't have anywhere to go. So you have two things that happen. One is eventually the diode will just disintegrate, and the other thing that can happen is the coil is still getting shorted to ground, and that energy has to go somewhere. And since it has no path, what happens then is that the coil wire inside there. It has an insulated wire winding around and around inside. Then what happens is that energy just is pumped into the coil itself, and the insulation of the wire, it heats up so much that it actually shits out the top of the coil. And even that, so what is the functional defect then when that happens? Does that cause no backlight, or does it cause something else?
No
Dimmed backlight?
Dimmed backlight, right? Salman, tell me about how that happens.
That happens because you lose the insulation between the coil, between the turns.
Yep.
That reduces the number of turns
Yeah.
in the coil. It changes the amount, the Henry.
Changes the Henrys, yes.
So it becomes, instead of like, let's say 10 microhenries, it becomes 5. And that reduces the amount of voltage generated. You get a dim, low.
Right, so you don't have no backlight, you have everything, working except if you fix everything else, but leave that coil there. After the coil took a shit, he has fused together the wires so the inductance of the coil is less. It's not able to boost the voltage all the way up. So the final result is that when you go to slide to full brightness, you can't, because the coil is just like, I only got 5 turns, man. That's the best I can do. I can put out 17 volts, that's it. I can't do 20. And so that's what we're seeing. So we do see coil failures. It's always the coil now in the iPhone 6. And we just talked about this on day 2, and then we pulled this phone out of the incoming piles. We were starting to give everybody something to work on, and this one just couldn't be more classic. So this was a hoot. So here we are at this real life backlight failure. So this is the LCD connector and anode line here. Here's the filter. What do we think about that filter? Looks good, tests good, beautiful filter. Then we head on over here to this area. Now let's take a guess. These are the 3 backlight caps. 1, 2, 3. Which one do you think is bad?
First one.
This one, because it has this sort of classic tell, which I used to think was a soldering defect that was like a solder ball there at manufacture. But now, having seen it so many times, look at the discoloration there. This guy became shorted, and in that process, shit out this little capacitor turd. So that's what that is, a little capacitor turd. That guy's definitely going to be the bad guy. He's going to be shorted to ground. And then once that happened, we have, here's the chip, here's the diode. How does the diode look? It looks bad. So eventually the diode failed because of that short to ground. And then once the diode failed, we had the chip still switching the coil voltage, and the coil voltage had nowhere to go. And so the coil heated up so much it shit out this beautiful coil turd. Look at that. That is what we think the insulation from, the little, it used to have a little like doohickey thing sticking out of it. But man, is that a steaming pile of shit or what?
That's Hershey Kisses.
A little Hershey.
I don't know about that.
Yep, and it got so hot that it melted its pad and squeezed out a solder ball right there as well. So this is a classic presentation, couldn't be more classic, of the special iPhone 6 backlight problem. So we decided that it would be fun, and this is why we're making a video, we thought it would be fun to see if we could actually make a coil shit. So we're going to try to capture a coil shitting on video. I don't know if this is going to work or not, but that's our plan. So we're going to go back here to our good board. So let's stick a screen on that. That's a 6S. Where's my where's a 6 screen? Who's got a 6 screen?
You just took one.
All right, here's one. That's a 6S.
Right here.
All right, here we go. 6.
I know. You see the connector? Was it different? You see it?
Yeah, for sure. It's in the-
Well, you can see this is a little different. It's going up here, yeah. Oh, I see.
All right, so this is our sacrificial phone here with a screen on it. So it has normal backlight. So everything's working, charged battery. So what do you guys think? I don't know. I don't really have a plan here. We're just kind of winging it. How should we try to get the coil to shit? How could we like kind of mimic the original
Leave the
problem?
battery on.
Just
No,
and then
we
wait
feed
a
it.
couple of years. All right, so
Short across the capacitor.
short across the capacitor. All right, that's one idea. We could try that. Short across the capacitor. I really want the coil to actually take a shit though. So I'm worried if we just short across the capacitor, which is kind of like the mimicking the actual defect.
It might take it time to do it.
Everything runs.
Not always do you actually see a coil shit. So I think if we just short it across the capacitor, it might just blow the diode and then we don't really get to see it shit. So I think it would be fun to just say, what if we short
The cap and the diode.
What if we short the diode leg, the coil leg of the diode, short that to ground, and see if we can induce
Oh, and then
the
everything
coil
runs.
to like sizzle out that insulation? It'd be kind of cool if we could actually show that then after that it actually makes that sort of half dim backlight, like that it doesn't go all the way up to full percentage. All right, let's give it a try. So to do that, let's do it. How should we do this?
With tweezers.
I don't know if let's try it. Let's put a wire there so that we can kind of control it a little bit. What tool should I use to try to get a wire on that diode leg? It's really buried right now. Let's grab a micro pencil and see if we can dig up it. So you're sure that it's okay to do this to this phone?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. In the name of science. Everybody loves science.
She wanted the disclaimer on camera.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is a customer phone. It's
The customer phone.
No.
Send
no.
this back, no fix.
Yeah. I'm sorry, we couldn't solve this one. Now to actually fix these though, they are all repairable, but you have to do you gotta rebuild the whole circuit. You gotta clear the short on the cap. You gotta get a new diode, obviously. You've gotta get a new coil if you want it to go all the way up to max brightness. And you've got to usually put in a new driver chip as well. So while you guys are here, you can let me know if my my video is like super off
It is.
the screen,
Completely off.
completely off. Fantastic. All right, I'm just tinning the wire right now. All right.
Shift it back.
Okay, go ahead. So what do you guys think of the course? Yeah, obviously you have to say it's great.
It's great.
Yeah, just to be clear.
Perfect, some might say.
Perfect, wow. Suck up, trying to brown nose. Alright. Now, that course week is a lot of fun. It's super exhausting, but it's always fun.
Yeah, you can mark.
Nobody had to actually eat any filters. I only had to yell at Yossi, I think. You're the only one I really
No, I
had
tried to
use.
bet him to eat a filter, but
You tried to
Oh,
get
what
him to eat a
happened?
filter? You just...
I
Wait,
mean, I won the bet. But
he
you know.
reneged on the bet?
No, we didn't agree on the filter.
Oh, yeah, see, you gotta be upfront with those conditions. What was the bet?
Reballing.
Micro BGA reball, chestnut,
Oh, reballing
and he had like a
chestnut.
5-minute head start.
Oh, it was like a competition?
Yeah,
Did it work?
mine did.
Oh, I see. I see how this... I see where the filter eating is coming in. It's making a lot of sense now. I mean, there's so, like were you gonna make him eat like a FL11 size or like...
I'm new to the filter eating, so you know, I was doing a dealer's choice.
Which ones taste the best? All right, so I stuck a wire on the diode leg. What do you guys think is going to happen? I think nothing is going to happen, and that's going to make a really boring video. But that seems like the way it goes with making videos. What do you think is going to happen?
I mean, if you think nothing's gonna happen.
You're like, well, yeah, then. I don't
We'll
know.
see.
We have,
Yeah, so you're shorting the
We'll
gap,
see
so everything's
that.
gotta pass through the coil, right? At this point.
We'll see.
This is the diode.
I mean,
You think the diode's gonna blow up and that's it?
First.
We hope for
And that
a
opens
third.
the circuit.
And then it's gonna be open circuit and it's gonna
then
visually
it'll
just
shut
look
off.
lame.
It won't stop.
So we're just killing a diode.
no, he's
that's
saying the
it.
diode goes out and then it's just the third.
No, no.
Oh, no,
No,
oh.
I'm saying-
You don't think we're gonna see any shunting?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see. You're probably right.
What do you?
Any money on
We
that?
might smell the shit.
All right, how about this?
We might smell it.
He said
We
you
might
could
smell it. Okay.
what about
Uh,
smoke?
so
Smoke for sure.
if the coil
It
shits,
doesn't carry any.
y'all see has to eat a filter.
All right.
All right. So here's the deal. We are going to, well, we have to have a screen connected in order for it to detect.
Detect that.
Yeah, so let's, I think
Where's the
the
fire extinguisher?
fire extinguisher, it's at the hardware store.
Yeah, freeze spray.
It's,
How
yeah,
cool.
where's the freeze spray? Yeah, that's for
It's
me.
in the fire hall right next door.
Yeah, we are
True,
adjacent
yeah.
to the fire. That is true. All right,
That's
let's see. Let's see what happens here. All right, the world's first coil shitting video coming up.
That should be the title though. iPhone takes shit, literally.
I think it should be. It's always the coil. Watch this. Watch this one take it. Let's see- How about this? Let's watch. Let's see what this coil thinks about my "it's never the coil" theory. All right, so I would be just doing that to short it to ground once we connect the battery.
Are you gonna use the battery or the DC?
I'll use the battery. Something like that. Would we be able to see it if anything happened? All right. Do it?
Yeah, do it.
Okay. All right, we're powering on. I see. All right, backlight is active. All right, here goes nothing. Dun 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 dun.
Hey, smoke.
That's the diode.
It didn't really shit as much as I wanted it to. Still going. Oh, look, it's shitting! It's shitting out of. It's shitting out of.
Oh yeah, there it goes.
It's shitting! Oh my god! Look at that! It's working!
I told you. Wow.
Wow! Oh my god, it just farted. Look at that. Wow!
Sharded is correct.
Is it?
Yeah, shit came out.
Wow, look at that. Oh, I'm familiar with the shard.
It's
Yeah.
just the
I
shape
have
of the
sons.
coil.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
You can see like the circle of heat where the coil.
Yeah,
is
isn't that
inside.
wild? Yay! That was pretty cool. Pretty cool. All right. That's pretty awesome.
Get on the phone or what?
Hey, you don't have to eat a filter. Oh wait, or
No,
what
if
was
it's
it?
shit.
Oh, he
it's
does?
supposed to eat it.
Okay. Rack it up.
And we have solder bolts.
Yeah, we do. Look at that. Dun, 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 dun. Let's look really close.
I think you have one on both sides.
Yeah.
Both pads should have coiled.
Look at that. It just got so hot, all of that energy, and then I mean we should probably take it off and like dissect it. But this stuff, I think, is the insulation from, I mean I think it's what we thought, you know, it's the insulation from the internal wire of the coil, bubbled up, cracked out of this top housing. It's like so much like violent energy. And you know, I don't know. All right,
That's crazy.
it's gonna have no backlight now, but let's just kind of confirm that for everybody here.
Can we see the diode?
You want to see the? Let's look at the diode. How would we measure the diode to know if the diode is good or not? Come on.
Diode mode
Yes, and
and cross
Beep on one side,
the
no beep on
cross the probes.
that's right. Diode mode one direction, get a value. Diode mode the other direction. Let's make sure it's still like soldered onto its back. Diode is probably bad. Let's just see if we have backlight, because it's possible that we just injured the coil. Let's see.
Oh, so we got like the 50%.
Yeah, I think that's possible, because we did not short the capacitor. All right, let's see. Oh, look, dim backlight!
Yeah.
Look at that. Look at that, coil is still working, because that coil, it is almost never the coil. It is hard to do. I mean, look at how hard it was to do that. We had to solder a wire and short this thing to the ground, but look at it, it's gonna be
Kind of
dim.
dim though.
It's dim, that's the thing, it's dim. He lost half his henries.
Yes.
Look at that, that is like totally perfect. Except for it has no touch. Yeah, so there you go. So this is now the exact problem, which is that coil damage, which natively occurs when one of the capacitors fails, and then the diode fails, and then you have that exact same thing happen. You have the short on the coil, which damages the coil, but even now he's still trying to work. He doesn't want to fail. He's so tough. He's just working so hard, even though the turns of the coil now have been stripped of their insulation. So what used to be X number of turns of the coil has now been reduced as that wire has kind of fused together. So that just has reduced the inductance of the coil. So it can still function, it can still make a backlight, but it can't go up to full brightness. So there you have it. We just captured a coil taking a shit. That's pretty cool.
iPad, we have Mythbusters.